Hi everyone and welcome back to Marketing Talks with Ivan. I'm your host Ivan and welcome back to an exciting new episode. Today, I have a very special friend of mine and a very dear friend of mine. Kash, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Kashish and you can call me Cash. I work as a global marketing strategist for OpenEyes Technology currently, and I have been in this marketing industry for almost 5 years now. And I've been working with different brands all over the world as of now. And basically, they are B2B. And very recently, I've written a novel, and I'm very excited to be on this marketing podcast today and share everything that I've learned in the last 5 years about marketing and consumer mindset.
I'm really glad to have you on this podcast, Kash, and we are going to have a very good time as well. Are you excited?
I'm super, super excited, I swear.
So, today's conversation is less about tactics and more about people because marketing doesn't fail because of platforms or algorithm. Everyone blames them. But in reality, it's all about the brands forget who is the actual consumer and who are they talking to. My guest has been obsessing about consumer mindset over years, not just about performance dashboards or media spends, but how people think, feel, and react. She has worked closely with different brands across the globe, from startups, and now she has used all of those insights and translated into her first written novel. Cash, I'm really excited to have you on this podcast. So let's get it started. So, one of the things, Cash, that really stood out from your entire journey is the fact that you always prioritize the consumer mindset. Why is that?
I think the biggest shift for me happened when I saw campaigns that were basically perfect fail in the market, and the ones that were successful were the ones that broke all the marketing rules that we are ever taught when we are first entering in this industry. And the difference was never the platform or the budget. It was basically whether the brands truly understood what people were feeling at that particular movement. Marketing today is very less about selling and it's more about decoding human behavior. And that's why we always say that marketing and psychology go hand in hand. It's basically understanding why do people hesitate? Why do they switch brands, which they are actually, being advocating for years at this point? Why do they suddenly care about sustainability or identity or convenience? Because the consumer is changing every single minute, every single year. And even when you travel across the world, each consumer carries a very different, values or motives around the buying segments. People from Asia will be very different and have a very different buying motive in contrast to people maybe from America or, European countries. When you sit close to these consumers long enough, you realize they are not buying products at this point. They are solving emotional or practical problems in their lives. So whenever I look at a brand problem, my first question is never what's the campaign about or what's the ROI needs to be, achieved. It's basically what actually the consumer is going through right now. Because if you understand that, you understand that marketing becomes very obvious at that point, and obviously all the goals will eventually come into line and place for you.
And when did you realize that marketing is more like a psychological than rather technical? Because I know it from a performance marketing standpoint, but I see you looking at it from a very consumer oriented mindset. So both of our perspectives are very different in a way.
Yeah, I think it started with my first job when I started working at a global level, and I started working and dealing with different markets basically. So when I was running a campaign, let's say for Thailand, and when I replicated the same ad campaign for Philippines, let's say, it wasn't giving me the same results it was giving me in the Thailand market. And that's when I started understanding that maybe the way I'm addressing to that problem is not as same as the problem which are being faced by the people in the Philippine market. And that's one, basically this point triggered for me that maybe what I'm thinking about, just replicating everything I learned in the business schools or during my bachelor's about marketing and, how we need to run a campaign. And I'm just replicating it. I'm just copy pasting them, right there. And they're not working. They need amendment because people these days try to relate to the brands where they feel there is a sense of like when they see themselves in that campaigns. when they think that this campaign was built for them, when there is a point of personalization into them. And how does that personalization come, right? That's the question everyone is asking everyone. The personalization comes from when you know the person in front of you. When you build the entire marketing campaigns around the person, which is your ICP, and you make them feel that, this entire thing that we are building here, the entire product is just made for you, just made to solve that one problem you're facing in your day to day life. That's when, people really start connecting with the brand. And in today's day, if you're not connected with the brand, the consumer is just, they have so much multiple options in this market right now. There's so many competitors. They quickly switch to the ones which are able to address this question better for them.
That's a really good take to the question, by the way, Cash.
Thank
And
you.
I was wondering, you have worked closely with different kinds of consumers. How has it changed the way you look at a brand?
I look at a brand with their sustainability or ethical stand is, because I talked about this thing in my thesis too, that today days brands are not just, something which are offering, basically product or services to you. It's not the only USP for them. It is basically a company with tangible actions and, stands and everything for everyone out there. The brands who are right there in between the consumers and taking a stand for what's wrong and what's right, and basically building the society around them, they are the ones who are succeeding with it, because that's the consumer these days are, especially the Gen Z as we speak. Gen Z basically wants a brand that can stand up to the societal norms, and the societal norms, not the stereotypical ones, but the ones that, are building a good society out there. So if you are able to take a stand for them, if you are able to, basically solve their problem at the same time, they are the brands which are going to be, running in the market for a long term.
Understood. And brands need to be more vocal in a way.
Exactly.
And you've been very honest about the fact that you love performance marketing. And both of us, by the way, work in the exact same industry as well, performance marketing.
Yeah.
But the fact that you also at the same time believe it's not the only thing that can sustain a brand or a business. Why do you think that performance marketing creates short term results but long term problems?
I think I personally love performance marketing. But at the same time, I personally believe that it spoils brand. So basically, when growth works, brand starts believing that growth can be bought. That's the entire point of performance marketing, right? All the startups that are entering the market, the first thing they always tell you about is how we can scale up the growth, how we can get more consumers out there, how we can get more leads out there, right? So instead of building relationships with the consumers, they start renting attention, because their entire focus is about conversions and leads and not about building a relationship with the consumer that's long lasting. So something like this, when it happens, it's very dangerous, because understand, the entire point of this thing, the entire point of, performance marketing is like a bubble. So once you are into it and it's growing, everything is perfect for you. Everything seems very nice for you because you're able to achieve the ROI. You're able to, make your client in that case satisfied, or maybe your, business owner more satisfied. But the moment the ad stops, the growth stops, because you're not focused on building a, relationship with your consumer. And that's where you realize that there is no real brand connection built. All that money that was spent, it was spent to get the leads. It was not spent to, build those real connections. Because at the very end of the day, we can tell you about this thing, that the entire marketing funnel, I personally feel one of the very crucial parts about that funnel is retention, and how, basically you make your present consumers into your brand advocates, and, you start utilizing them to, convince other people to run through the entire marketing funnel of awareness, consideration, and conversion. And I think it's really something, the entire point of, the brand advocates turning basically your consumers, it's something which is still very undervalued, the entire concept. So I personally feel that any marketing campaign should be a perfect balance of organic marketing as well as performance marketing, so that, whatever growth or success you are achieving, it's long lasting.
And what actually happens when brands rely completely on paid growth?
I think the point when you're 100% relying on the paid growth, the point that you're missing is basically trust, right? You're really not focusing on telling those consumers out there that we are the brands you can trust. We are the brands that are that are better than anyone out there in the market, right? Because trust comes from consistency, value, experiences. These things can't be shortcut, right? So for me, I think personally, performance marketing or ads and anything like that is it's more about how fast we can grow. It's really answering the questions around why would someone stay, why what else they can get from if they become a loyal customers to us. So when the brands focus so much on the first question over the second question, they rarely struggle to sustain in the market in the long term.
And how does performance marketing actually disconnect brands from the real consumer?
Because the entire point, right, that you're in a bubble in performance marketing. The more budget you put, the more leads all the platforms will get to you. And maybe the leads might not be as quality ones or as quantifying ones, but at the same time you're getting the results, right? But that's the entire point. The results that you're getting is because the more money you put, the more results you get, right? It's not something which is long sustainable in the market. People might buy your product right now, but people will forget about it in the long term. So that's exactly where the brands come up with something which is more organic marketing, right? The entire organic marketing concept comes here live because in the organic marketing you're so much focusing about advocating the problems of the consumer, telling them that what's wrong, what's right. You're telling them that we have been there, we have seen it, and we are solving it up for you. Even the testimonials that you're going to be running, it kind of connects you to the brand basically. Even I would say if you're doing some kind of pop-ups or something out there for a B2C brand, I think just imagine the kind of personal touch that will bring to the consumer, that oh yeah, I went to that pop-up shop from XYZ and I felt very nice. So the entire point around customer experience, I personally feel that is missing in the performance marketing point. And the more we are running these things, the more digital we are becoming, the more there is so many options out there. Something which is definitely making a very difference out there in the market is how you're making your customers feel at the very end of the day. This is what everyone is running around. That's the point.
So, Cash, now let's talk about the consumer itself. See, consumers today are very much different as compared to 5 years back. How do you see or even feel that how have they evolved over a period of time, especially in the way they choose brands as well?
Well, in my personal opinion and in my personal experiences, consumers want alignment. They want to understand whether that brand is kind of relating to it, whether they are actually the brand is able to understand the emotions, the kind of sensitivity around the consumers, or whether they stand for something, whether it's making my life easier or better. So I think I can say it very, confidently in this thing that 5 years ago the entire focus from the consumer mindset was around the price and the convenience basically, and these two were actually dominating the decision making power of the consumers. But today, and I would actually give a very great credit to Gen Z about this thing, that they have changed the entire consumer game to identity and resonance. So the consumers and the brands have to stand up against it because the consumers are asking you that okay, you cannot just be a brand that is offering us some product and services. You have to have a stand, you have to act as an active member of the society, and you need to understand whatever product you're carrying is carrying some kind of morals behind it. And I would like to give an example here. So if you just take a beauty industry, 5 years ago it was all about how it can make you better, right? It was more about how you can be XYZ, how you can look like a certain actor or actresses. So it was more about how you can change yourself. But now the beauty industry has changed its entire wordings and how they are addressing to the consumer. It's more about how you can feel confident in your own skin, how it's enhancing whatever you are. So they are not talking about, changing yourself. They're basically focusing on about how you can feel confident in whatever you are. And that's basically a very big, a great example of the thing that, people don't want to anymore buy from the brand that, they can just be there. People want to buy from a brand they can relate to. They can actually say that, okay, this is a brand that resonates to my personal values and my personal belief. What brands basically are often, ignoring that the consumers are exhausted because there's so many competitors out there in the market, and they want basically a brand which is more honest, which is more simple, and basically a brand that actually listens to their problem without telling them that, okay, you need to change this thing about yourself.
Understood. And why do you think that people actually want to resonate with the brand? What actually is their genuine mindset do they have?
I think marketing is something which was always seen as something that basically just gets the leads, or, gets the sales, or, let's say all the, ROIs and everything. But now marketing is more about, building a relationship with the consumers. And consumers are very sensitive, right? They don't want you, you know, giving them offers, giving them all of those, fancy deals and all of that. They want empathy. It's that, simple that brands need to understand this thing that the people, it's not the technology that you are dealing with at the end of the day. It's the people, and people have emotions. And all the brands which are actually talking about emotions of a consumer, they are talking about, what they go through all day long. Those are the brands which are able to relate more to the consumers at the very end of the day for me.
So, Cash, do you feel that brands have started ignoring emotions or actually they have started catering to them?
I think if you would have asked me that question 5 years ago, I would say that, the brands have been ignoring people's emotion. But if you ask me this question now, I think brands have started to, cater to human emotions more in all of their marketing campaigns. Because let's start with an example for this one too, right? If you see the Indian market and the beauty industry in the Indian market, initially it was more focused about, how we can achieve a certain, persona of a person who was supposed to be beautiful. And everyone was running after it. Even all the brands in their entire marketing, messaging and campaigns, it was all about, how you can be this particular person and this particular persona. And usually, this is the power about marketing that nobody understands. And I think this is where, we are really underselling marketing. Marketing carries more power than we are giving it to, or we give the credit to. Marketing is really not just about getting you the deals or getting you the numbers out there. It's really shaping the way your brand is going to sustain in the market, as well as consciously or unconsciously. It's kind of giving some messaging out there in the society about certain things. You rarely carry some, weight around it. So hence, a lot of, coming back to our example, a lot of beauty brands in India, they were so much focused about, getting that persona. They didn't even realize the kind of messaging they were, circulating in the market around it. And now, thanks to social media, thanks to the consumer being more woke around those concepts, being more verbal about these things, the brands are forced to take more credible, more conscious and ethical stance on certain things, and be conscious about what they are putting out there in the market. Be aware that, whatever messaging or whatever brand positioning they are going to take for their product will carry some certain kind of societal message around there in the society. So now the entire beauty industry in India itself has changed. It's more about feeling more comfortable in your own persona than achieving a certain personas out there, right? So I think initially it was ignored, the entire human emotions, or, the weight that brand messaging carries was undervalued. But now brands have actually realized it, and they carry more emotions and more, strong credibility around them.
So, Cash, I really like the point that you made. And also, further adding to that, is now brands are focusing more on acceptance and empowerment, being comfortable in your own skin as well. What do you think about this?
I think it's definitely there. The entire concept about brand sensitivity, right? That, brands have started to understand that, there's cultural and social environment that your consumers basically live in. And, whatever, as I said, whatever brand messaging you are putting out there for your product in there, the people will kind of resonate to it. And that's what, initially people brands used to think that whatever we are going to sell about our products, they will buy it. But now they are understanding that whatever messaging we are selling to them, they're also buying that messaging too. And they're kind of, replicating that messaging in their day-to-day life. So brands are becoming very sensitive around it. They are understanding that, their messages carry more value to them, and more power to from them than they would have understood maybe 5 years ago. And that's why the entire concept around woke brands came into power, right? The entire point that brands are more focused on how they can do more ethical, more socially acceptable, and as I said, more kind of an empowerment branding in the society. So it all becomes basically we are making the consumers a better society, or something that we can all live in.
So, Cash, why do you feel that brands can no longer be neutral?
I don't think so. The brands can really stay neutral anymore because consumers are not seeing them as just sellers who are selling them, a product or service. They're really seeing them as, as an active participant in the society. So the brands which are basically taking ethical stance, who are considered more woke brands to be, more technical about the term in the industry, they have more, longer longevity to sustain in this market than their competitors. Because I have done a thorough research about this thing in my thesis too, about talking about brands, how they were, sustaining themselves in the political times. And you would be shocked to know that brands who took a stand against the wrong had an increase in their revenue, had seen, people becoming more loyal consumers to them than in comparison to their competitors. So it's really a bigger matter now. So being a woke brand can actually help you not just get more revenue out there in the market, but also, build an entire ecosystem of consumer that actually, is a loyal consumers to you and not just, an active buyer.
And many a times brands try to be woke, but they fail really badly.
I think a brand fails when they're trying to look woke, right? When they're trying to treat, sensitivity as, a marketing strategy rather than, a company value. So when, they're trying to look woke, it's really something that, consumers are actually, catching up that, they're not genuinely caring. It's just a part of their strategy to, blend in the market and, blend in the marketing strategies, because consumers know these days that, we are just going to resonate with the brands who really resonate with our personal values. And basically, authenticity kind of shows in action, right? Hiring choices, product decision, how you're putting them out there, and how the policies are looking for you, and not just social media posts. So you can't fake alignment as so. And, and consumers are very well. If the brands are becoming woke, the consumers are also becoming woke, right? They're very quick to call you out for that you're just faking it out there. You're not the real brand. Basically, you're not genuinely caring about consumers or their welfare. So it's something which is very quick for consumers to point it out today, if you're really someone who genuinely cares for them, or you're just trying to blend into the society.
So, Cash, that was a really good take to the question. Now, moving over to brand storytelling. So, in terms of brand storytelling today, it feels very different from the traditional kind of advertising back in the days. How do you feel that storytelling has actually changed over a period of time?
Traditional storytelling was more focused on telling the consumers that look how great our product is, and now it has changed drastically to look how it fits day-to-day life. I think the brands initially were very much focused on selling themselves as the hero of the story, and now because of the entire consumer mindset changing, because of entire concept of social media and people becoming more woke, the brands are now selling the consumers as their heroes, and they are just playing a supporting role right there in their day to day life. The storytelling these days, I would say, feels more like a conversation and experiences rather than, just selling them up as, the thing that, is out there in the market. And the shift also happened because I think the consumers are so much loaded with the marketing messages, right? If you take you and me, I mean, every day we must be getting like 5 to 10 messages from all the, brands out there selling one thing or the other, right? The only thing as a consumer, or the only thing, that is making these stories survive now, are the ones where people can actually see themselves in. So the marketing messages where people are actually resonating where they are saying, okay, this is something that speaks to me, or this is something that is, feels like basically it was personalized for me, are the only stories that are, surviving in the market these days. Hence, I think the entire concept of brand storytelling has changed drastically because of all these factors in the last 5 to 10 years, I would say.
So, Cash, this brings me to the most exciting part of the podcast, your book. So, you applied the same kind of consumer psychology while you wrote this book. Can you tell me more about your book?
So to give you a little bit, insight about my book's name is The Love That Carries Chaos, and it's available globally now on Amazon and Flipkart. So it talks about, a girl, how, she kind of moved to a new country with a lot of her emotional baggages, and how when she moves, she has to already, because moving to a new country comes with new experiences, comes with new, entire new thinking, entire new, mindset of people, and how she's starting her life afresh while she still has some emotional baggage, and she's trying to find a new version of herself. And I think when I started writing this book, the first thing I wanted to do is to write it for people, basically. So I wanted to include experiences that people can resonate to, because I've myself, moved countries. I've been there. When you start a new life somewhere, you feel a bit out of place sometimes, right? And you already have a lot, things that you're carrying along with, like your emotional baggage, your, a lot of other pressures around in you, and you're finding yourself at the very end of the day in your mid 20s, at least you're finding who you are. And I think that's a very, very underestimated question, that if today also, if somebody asks me who I am, I want to describe myself, except for my degrees, or what I do for my professional life, or everything else. I want to know who I am as an individual without all these measurable achievements. And I think instead of sounding very intellectual or something when I was writing my book, I wanted to sound very honest and relatable to my readers. I wanted them to see a part of themselves in the experiences that my characters were, living through. And I think the book kind of reflects the exact same marketing, beliefs that I've had, that, that when you connect with people to truth, it definitely delivers you more perfection results than you are, trying to sell them as a perfect idea of, something out there. So when I was writing this book, I was really focused on creating conversations that people are usually having with themselves in their own mind, or when they are having, some experiences that they are trying to live with their friends or any other person in their mid 20s, then focusing something like, this is the ideal thing out there.
So, Cash, so anyone who is watching this podcast today, what would you advise them?
I think if I want anybody to unlearn, especially the brands who are listening to this podcast today, want to, that one idea that they should unlearn is that the louder the marketing is, it basically equals to more perfect results. I think sometimes the brand really needs to slow down and listen to their consumers, instead of, just pushing the messages out there, or pushing the messages that don't carry enough strength or relatability to what their consumers are actually asking them silently, or actually their consumers are experiencing in their day-to-day lives. Growth doesn't always means that you have to do more. Sometimes it is just simple act of understanding what needs to be done. Basically, I think a lot of the brands these days focus on getting the small term growth rather than focusing on building the long term connection. And they really need to understand that if you really want to survive in the market today, you want to build that one to one connection with your consumers. You have to make them feel that, you're a part of our family, as we all say, right? That a brand is building an ecosystem where everyone needs to feel like a family. In my personal opinion, marketing works best when brands remember that they are talking to humans, and we humans have the tendency of, falling for people who kind of understand us.
Understood. And to be honest, from this whole podcast, I really understood one thing. It's the fact that, see, marketing isn't just about ads, it's about creating that sense of awareness. And to sum up your full story, Cash, it's the fact that whether you're in writing or in marketing, you need to understand the consumer like the way I understand you.
Exactly.
Yeah, we connect. That's the main thing. The whole thing is about connecting with whoever you're trying to speak to and driving the right kind of message.
To that. And I think at the end of the day, Marketing isn't about tools and platforms, right? It's really about the people. And all the brands that are understanding this thing, they are the ones who are changing the game for all of us.
Exactly. And that's a very good point that you actually mentioned, Cash. And this comes to the end of our podcast. Cash, thank you so much for being on our podcast today. And I really appreciate you to take the time. And we've had a really nice conversation.
It was my pleasure, I swear. And this has been one of the best conversations I've had recently. So thank you so much, Ivan, for inviting me.
And to all the viewers watching this podcast today, thank you so much. And we'll see you in the next podcast. See you next time.